Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate your words and your support. And as long as you are a believer in freedom and trade, you are a very good friend of Mexico, because exactly those are the principles in which we can build a better future for our nations. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here again in this Chamber of Commerce. It's a pleasure for me to listen to the wisdom of one man who is committed with trade, businesses, both sides of the border and in the world. I share point by point the words that Tom has made today, in particular because I'm a believer too in trade, commerce, and freedom. Those are the key issues for prosperity. But now let me talk about the relationship between Mexico and the United States, in particular in the economic field. Mexico and the United States have a long tradition of economic cooperation, thanks in part to the hard work of businessmen like you. That is why it gives me great pleasure to be here with the members of the Chamber of Commerce who have for many years bet on Mexico and contributed to our common prosperity. We were talking a few minutes ago, and somebody told me that Mexico had last year the perfect storm, talking about troubles that we faced in 2009. And that's true. As you know, Mexico, like most of the world, has faced difficult times recently. Last year, we went through a severe economic crisis. The economy went down by 6.5% last year. We were too close to the epicenter of the earthquake, which is exactly American economy. And I remember in the second quarter of the year, the economy went down by more than 10%, just previous to the elections. So anyway, but the interesting thing is we had the economic crisis. We had the emergence of the H1N1 flu virus in Mexico. In addition to that, we also suffered the second worst drought in 70 years in the country, and at the same time, the biggest ever drop in oil production. We lost last year 200 barrels a day. So you can imagine all the problems that we face all together. The perfect storm, that's true. However, we did our job and managed to overcome all those crises. For instance, we were transparent to the world in the flu crisis. We opened all the information and managed the crisis exactly despite the economic cost that we suffer. And that provided to the world the opportunity to prepare to face this pandemic disease as it was qualified by the International Organization of Health. At the same time, we apply counter-cyclical measures in order to reduce the impact, in particular in jobs in Mexico. We created very aggressive programs in terms of temporary works, providing opportunities for the people to work in their own communities. We provided loans for small enterprises with an average of 5 workers per enterprise. And in that way, we helped more than 100,000 small businesses in Mexico. And finally, we keep the public finances with responsibility. In the previous year, we made several reforms, structural reforms, if I can say that. First, we made a reform to the pension system in which we passed from a pay-as-you-go system towards an individual account system, and with this, we save for public finances not only the capability to pay the retirement for any public servant. We save for public finances more than 30 points of GDP at net present value. And with that, we saved Mexico from a very important crisis in the medium term. We passed a reform in the oil sector. And with this reform, Pemex, the owner-state company, now is able to allow more flexible contracts. Through Pemex will be able to get the investment, the technology, and the operational capability to increase oil production and natural gas production. We passed a reform in order to raise the public revenues and reduce the dependency of Mexico of the oil revenues. And with that, we are keeping in reasonable manner the equilibrium in public finances. Actually, let me tell you a tale that we were attending the G20 meetings all the year, Pittsburgh and Italy and other places. And there were two lessons on those meetings. First, I heard in any single meeting all the countries talking about to avoid protectionism, to refuse to increase tariffs. But the day after of each meeting, 15 out of 20 countries raised tariffs in their own economies. But in the case of Mexico, even in the middle of the crisis, we reduced tariffs in Mexico. We moved from 13% on average towards less than 5% on tariffs in Mexico. Why? Because we do believe in market, and we do believe that the most important economic challenge, not only for Mexican economy, but also for American economy, is competitiveness, as Tom has said. And the second tale is, in the last one, or one of the latest, sadly in Pittsburgh, the issues that we were discussing in the G20 meeting was either we need to follow with a counter-cyclical measure, or we need to prepare an exit strategy for the economies. And we were discussing with my finance minister there, and we reached a conclusion. Well, all the countries agreed that we need to continue with the counter-cyclical measures. Other countries believe that it's probably time to prepare an exit strategy, but in the case of Mexico, because we were losing revenues not only by the crisis, but also for the drop in oil production, we had no alternative, so we prepared exit strategy. And despite the very high political costs we suffered, we raised taxes at the end of the year, and we reduced public expenditure. Actually, we took very difficult decisions in political and social terms in order to close very inefficient state-owned companies, in particular in the electricity sector. And with this, we show our determination to preserve the health of public finances in Mexico. Fortunately, because very few months later, we started to see all these troubles that more developed economies like Greece and others are suffering precisely because they were not as strong in order to keep the equilibrium in public finances. So after crisis, inside the crisis, in the middle of the crisis, we did our job. And today, we are overcoming all those crises that I told. Today, the Mexican economy is recovering, and the indicators show that. For instance, in the first 4 months of this year, January to April, in Mexico were created almost 400,000 new jobs in net terms, which is higher number of new jobs than here in the United States, which is by far larger economy. 400,000 new jobs for Mexican people and families, which is the highest number ever created in a 4-month period in Mexico. Now, our exports last March grew by 40% compared with the year earlier, and this increase is the highest since January 95. Our economy, 1 year ago, IMF was estimating that Mexican economy could grow minus or a little bit minus 1%. But today, the forecasts of IMF and other forecasts are talking about Mexican economy growing and will grow by 4.2%, and that's true, maybe even more. So, in sum, we are in a great position to take advantage of the global economy recovery. And now, after the crisis, and after all the problems we passed, we are stronger and more competitive than before. I believe, my friends, I believe that in the future, Mexico's prosperity, as well as the prosperity of the whole North American region, depends on strengthening our economic relationship. To this end, we have taken steps towards building a more integrated North America in recent years. It's clear for me the impact of NAFTA. As Tom was saying, NAFTA have created more jobs, not only for Mexican people, but also for American people, for American workers. Almost 6 million new jobs coming from NAFTA. Actually, today, Mexico is the second largest foreign buyers of American products. And that is a good reason to increase the relationship between Mexico and the United States. The other is the outcome of NAFTA in terms of the trade between our two countries. Bilateral trade between Mexico and the United States has grown more than 300% since NAFTA was signed, reaching almost $300 billion a year last year. And the last 10 years, American companies invested a total of $124 billion in Mexico, accounting for 54% of our foreign direct investment during that period. Now, we need to realize, however, that the North American region has lost its dynamism in recent years. That's true. We are losing competitiveness vis-à-vis with Asia and vis-à-vis with other regions like Europe. And in my opinion, one of the reasons for our worst performance is, I believe, our relative lack of integration as a region compared to other parts of the world. The truth is, we have lost the initial advantage NAFTA gave us. And to recover this ground, we need to catch up and maximize the comparative advantages of our countries. The idea is this. In this global economy in which we are living today, we need to be as much competitive as any other region of the world. And the only way to be competitive in that way is to integrate and maximize the mutual advantages and complementaries between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. In that sense, in an open economy, in a global economy, the key is more integration and not more isolation. More free market and less high tariffs. The key issue is to take an advantage of all the opportunities we have in front of us. The key for that is trade and more freedom. More freedom for private companies, more freedom for markets, and not only good markets, but also service markets, financial markets, labor markets. In this global economy, The future that we want of success and competitiveness for American and Mexican companies can only be achieved in the measure that the companies and the economies are integrated. The more integrated we are, the larger the gain for the North American economy as a whole. Mexico and the United States are clearly complementary economies. It's almost a textbook case of microeconomics. One is a large economy, the other is a small economy. One is abundant in capital, the other is abundant in labor. One has an older population, the other has a young and hard-working population. And only through closer economy integration we can prosper more quickly and make our economies grow together. If we want to grow our economies, we have to make them more competitive. And this will only be possible if we achieve the economic integration of North America, a region that should be at least as powerful as the large Asian economies, or the European economy, which despite its current problems has managed to advance toward integration and competitiveness. For these reasons, my friends, I would like to congratulate the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for launching the Vision 2020, the 2020 Leadership Initiative, which is a very important and crucial step in the right direction, because you understand the strategic nature of the economic relationship between our two countries. I encourage business leaders from Mexico and the United States to support any project promoting more economic integration and strengthening cooperation to turn those proposals into reality. In the case of Mexico, let me tell you that, again, we suffered a lot with the crisis, but we took the opportunities inside the crisis. We improved the competitiveness of the economy. We tried to get the benefits of such moment of change. And now, after crisis, we gain competitiveness versus other regions of the world. Now, for instance, there are several indicators talking about the Mexican competitiveness. For instance, A.T. Kearney talked that the cost in Mexico for manufacturers is the lowest cost in developing countries, even compared with China, India, or Brazil. The Doing Business indicator say that in terms of tariffs or public requirements, Mexican is the more competitive economy for businesses. Of course, the same conclusion could come from analyzing the transportation cost these days. And the evidence is, of course, in the outcome of the trade and the economy. Today, Mexico has the highest percentage in terms of the market share of the American imports. We passed almost 10 years coming down in our participations in the American imports. And today, we moved from 9% toward 13% in the American imports. And today, we overpass China as the second largest partner in terms of trade with the United States. That's our good news for Mexico and good news for the United States. So, my friends, the point is our two countries need each other and are key strategic partners for the future prosperity of our peoples. We need to understand and we need to explain to our people that the prosperity that we want for them, we can only reach if we understand that we need the competitiveness of our region. That is the only way in which the American economy could be competitive. That's the truth. There is no other way to do so. And there is a big chance, a big opportunity for all if we allow the liberty and the freedom to do their work, if we allow the market to provide opportunities for the people, both sides of the border, greater competitiveness is crucial to recovery of the North American economies. And the only way to do this is through more integration and not isolation. Our economies are clearly complementary. The closer together we are, the more competitive we will be and the more we will grow. Therefore, I invite you to work with Mexico to forge even closer economic ties and consolidate North America as the most competitive and prosperous region in the world. Thank you very much for your invitation.